Frontline Baddies, and anyone else who is accessing our podcast. My name is Danny. I'm part of the Frontline Baddies crew here, along with co-founders Eileen and Tracy. Before digging into episode 5, I think it's important to acknowledge Frontline Baddies operates off of the north of Turtle Island. We strive for decolonization, land back, and acknowledgement of continued colonization through the Canadian government. We are a group of humans that are Indigenous, refugee, immigrant, and settlers to Turtle Island. We acknowledge our ancestors' plight for us to be here. We acknowledge our siblings' trauma in this line of work. We did not choose it. It chose us. And today is a really cool episode, actually, a little different from the ones that we have done thus far. And we're going to be talking about small wins. And yeah, you know what? Small wins. I'm going to bring it over to Tracy for a second. Can you tell us a little bit about small wins and what they are for anyone listening who maybe doesn't know?
Yes. I mean, I feel like frontline workers know this, but sorry, frontline baddies. This is also more than targeted to just y'all. So small wins are still wins. The small wins are the things that get us through like our day to day. They're the one small thing that happens, but has positive impact throughout that relation, maybe with the person that you're walking alongside, or like for your day, or maybe for your week. And it could be something so small. It could be just something that is so small, but it is like, yes, we finally got it. And they're not big things like someone getting housing. That's a huge thing. That's a huge celebration. We're talking about something that is a step towards a bigger win, right? So like a client or a person served or a person you're walking alongside of coming up and saying, hey, actually asking for something from you when maybe historically they've never asked anything of you because they've just always had to do it themselves. And having, a coworker who really wasn't understanding why a client was behaving the way they were, coming in and saying, I get it now. I understand. Like, I understand that that's because they went through trauma. Like, and it can be something so small, but just something so impactful. And it's my favorite thing. And this might be my favorite episode. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
Love it.
Yeah, small wins are important to acknowledge in this line of work because sometimes that's all that's kind of keeping you going in that moment. And personally, I don't like to label wins as small or big because I feel like sometimes they seem small, but then, like Tracy said, they manifest into something so much bigger. And it was all because of the small win that we were able to get to this bigger place, right? And yeah, so this is a more light and optimistic episode. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of the wins that we've experienced in this line of work.
You make a point on the winning and like the small versus big. I always got hung up on the winning, right? Like that's the piece that I got hung up on. I was like, who are we playing against?
Life.
Well, because when I first heard that like phrase, and I can't remember where I first heard it, but I was like, who are we playing against? Like, what game are we playing? Because I'm a competitive human. So I'm like, yeah, winning 100. How do I win? What does that look like? How do I unlock to the next level and like level myself up? So we're just pulling in W's day in and day out, it had me reflect on like, what systems are we playing and who are we playing against in those systems, which is always an interesting thing for me, I guess. So I'm curious, like, so Eileen, you're saying like this, you don't like the small versus big language around it, but what do you have other thoughts on this like mentality of like the small wins, or we could also call them like lollipop moments, because that's a thing too. Like they're just like nice moments,
That is the cutest thing. Lollipop moments?
Yeah.
I love that. I have not heard that before. I really like that. Sorry.
So like lollipop moments are like these moments that maybe they're a little different, but the idea of a lollipop moment is that like you did something that was very impactful to someone else, but was very small to you. Like in your mind, like you didn't even think of it. Like you just did it because that's who you are and what you do. So it could be like just, I don't know, it could a lollipop moment that I don't know if Eileen remembers, but she recently got me coffee and a morning pastry not too long ago because she knew I was editing an episode all night long for our podcast. And like it meant a lot to me, but you know, that's just kind of who Eileen is. And I know I'm not the only one that she's done that with, but it meant a lot to me. I was really, really excited about it and happy, you know, so it's a little like lollipop moment.
It's really cute. No, I really like your analogy of like, who are we playing against? And I think when I talk about like small wins or big wins, it's also important to acknowledge the context of which we're talking about, because the thing that we're playing against or whatever is the system, right? And we need to acknowledge that even though these wins are seemingly small, that's only because the playing field isn't even. And that's why in the context of that, it's maybe considered a small win when really it is actually quite a big deal, right? And yeah, sometimes you're in the moment of like, I'll just take what I can get. And that's what keeps you going, right?
It's like that. I know there was a movie, I think, where they did this. I want to say Hilary Swank was in it. I love Hilary Swank. Anyways, where, you know, there's like a football field or like a very big playing area, and you have everybody stand on like the starting line, and then you'll ask certain questions, and some people will either take a step forward or take a step back. And then at the very end, they're like, okay, and everyone's, you know, kind of staggered because sometimes it's like, you know, who comes from, you know, a single family income, take 2 steps back or something, or, you know, certain ethnicities take a certain step forward, or, you know, the list goes on of all the different things. And then they're like, okay, so now we're going to race. Does this seem fair? And some people are only 2 steps ahead, like right about to get the finish line, and there's all these people at the back, way further from even the starting line of other people. And they're like, how is this going to be fair? There's no way I'm going to be able to run all the way to get there in time or before any of those other people that are only a couple steps ahead. So I think perspective, like you're saying, Eileen, is so important when we're talking about, I mean, anything in this line of work for sure, but especially when we're looking at wins where someone else might be looking and being like, that wasn't really a big deal. You know, the kid, you know, learned how to use a toothbrush, or the client, you know, was able to afford pants or something. And then we're just like, oh my gosh, that's the best thing ever. And, you know, people don't always understand that. And that is like a huge win for that person, but maybe it only looks like a small win, like on paper, but it really isn't.
Totally.
Or like maybe it looks like a small win to people who are like an average, a general citizen. I don't like calling anyone average because I don't think any of us should be labeled on that, but like the general population maybe does in their day to day, but like for others of us that are neurodivergent, like, yeah, brushing your teeth can be hard. Like, truthfully, depression's a real thing. Yeah. I was like, I don't think I'm going anywhere further than that. That was my thought on it. Yeah.
I was gonna just, that reminded me the other day I was talking to somebody about, I'm realizing that I have a lot of issues around overstimulation and sensory stuff. And I was I was thinking that I was relating to somebody, and I was like, you know, sometimes you're like eating your food and it's like your favorite food and you eat it all the time, and then you take one bite of it and it's just like immediate no, immediate ick. My skin is crawling. I can't sit here anymore. I need to go and do like a 5-mile run. This is horrible. I'm never eating this thing again. And I'm like, haha, you know? And then the other person's like, have you talked to a doctor about this?
You're like,
they're like, I don't think that's normal. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Everything's good. But I mean, a big win or a small win, a win for me in that case were to be to like make sure that I'm like stocking up my fridge with like safe foods that I know are really good for me, that are going to nourish me, and that I'm not, I have a less of an issue of having some sort of like a sensory issue come up. Meat's a big thing, things like that. And that's only for myself. Obviously, it's a little bit different, but just, I mean, that can impact so many different people and the way that we see it form with, there's a lot of neurodivergent young people that I work with where anything like oral, like mouth related is like it's like a big thing. If they're brushing their teeth, if they're eating like yogurt, it's like, whoa, that's crazy.
Textures.
They never would have, silly, but I mean, able to get like nourishment into their body or to like keep their mouth clean is like a big deal.
Totally.
A general public is maybe not used to seeing some of like the things that are very normalized in frontline work or with neurodivergence in general. I have experienced an incident where a kid didn't know how to use any utensils. I had never come across that before in my entire life of any individual not knowing how to use utensils to eat. And that was a very humbling experience for myself, a bit of a mind bend, just processing like what that individual had to go through to be the age they were without knowing how to, or without getting the support and learning how to. It might seem silly. It might seem like using a fork is silly, but for someone else, that is their difference of quality of life in such a huge way. And like, it might seem small to an outsider's perspective, but I'm sat back like, that's big, baby. Like, yeah, you use that fork, you use that knife. Come on, help me cook. Let's build those skill set up, Like, I'm here for the small wins. I'm here for it. I don't care if other people poo-poo it. They can poo-poo it all they want. Go poo-poo somewhere else.
Go poo-poo somewhere else. There's somewhere else you can do that. Not here. Not this space.
No. Can y'all tell I'm excited? I just love it. I love it.
And like you're always going to come across folks who are going to put down these small wins, like, oh, so you got someone to brush their teeth, whoop-de-doo, that's expected of you in normal functioning life. Like, oh, like they're probably just like too lazy up to this point. Why are we celebrating this as a victory? And it's like, again, it comes to the whole like the playing field is very uneven, and there's so many things that are going on with this person that you might not ever experience in your life that prevents you from brushing your teeth. So like, you need to shut your mouth.
Mm-hmm. Zip it. We're just telling people to shut up.
Zip the lip.
Well, some people need to.
Essentially, as we're all talking, because it goes back to the stigma of mental health. I will stand on this, man. I get stoked around this stuff. Okay, because I had bipolar, I had PTSD, I was just diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm certain people knew way before I did that I had ADHD, especially you too. But I really don't think people understand when you have like mental health diagnoses, there are certain things that are just such a struggle sometimes. And like, it doesn't make sense to anyone else, and it doesn't have to, might I add, but like, it just like, there is just some things that are seemingly small or I want another word for it, but how other people see it is just in such an obtuse way of like, oh, well, that you should just be doing that. And it's like much to what you like to say, Danny, like, tell me you've never struggled with mental health without telling me you've never struggled with mental health issues before. Like, this, yeah, yes, I wish that I could respond to things in an even keel all the time in my emotions. But guess what? Like, I am bipolar, which means like sometimes I'm in mania and I cannot respond to things in an even keel as much as I want to try. Like, that's just the reality, and is also why I'm on medication, so that I don't get into that state. Like, not a bad thing, just a reality thing. Like, that's my reality. If your reality isn't that, that's fine. But don't poo-poo my reality, and don't poo-poo my wins in my reality, because my wins look different than your wins. And I'm not trying to make like six figures a year. Like, that's not That's your reality. That's fine. My reality is like, I just want to live a good life, where I stand. I'll say it with my full chest every day, all day, every day.
Yes. I was
I
going to say,
love
I
it.
think the most like discouraging thing ever, and I've seen it happen quite a bit with clients and young people that I've worked with, is they get, really excited about something, or they really want to show off a new skill, and maybe the skill isn't, it isn't what maybe the general public would deem as like a really big deal. But, for that person, it's a really big accomplishment. And you can just see the recipient of this information's eyes kind of glaze over and they're kind of like, oh, cool, that's great. And they're not really, giving the time and attention to that person as for like what they're looking for in terms of attachment, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really heartbreaking. Like you look at the aftermath of that, and that's just like proving, I can't trust this person or people in general, and I can't this and I can't that. And we like to, our brain likes to make up stories so that we understand the world around us. And that definitely happens when you're young. It definitely happens when you're a vulnerable population, whatever that might look like for you. And, I don't know. It's just it's something so small to just live in that excitement with that other person and like live in the moment to really cherish it and let them know that that's such a big deal and that you're proud of them, etc. It's so small and it can impact the rest of that person's life.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought this up because it totally triggered a memory of mine, uh, of a client where something similar, that basically happened to them. So I had a client who historically has been very, like, difficult to get to clean and organize their living space.
Mm.
They've had a history of like hoarding, like, burning and damaging things in their living space, and it took like over a year and a half to get them to a point where they were able to somewhat like upkeep their space and somewhat clean and organized, but they were still struggling with it. And I remember coming onto a shift early in the morning, and this client had been up since like 6 in the morning because he knew that there was a room check happening later in that afternoon, and he wanted to be prepared for it, right? So he was up very early before I even got into my shift, and by the time I got on, he was like almost done cleaning and organizing his space. And I remember him coming out to the hallway because he saw me, and he was like, guess what? I've been up all morning cleaning and organizing my room, and like I did a really good job. Like, can you come look? And I remember like there was two staff on. It was me and my coworker, and he was talking to the both of us, and my coworker didn't even look up from his computer and was like, okay, like that you're supposed to keep your room clean. Like, why are you telling us? And
Yeah.
I remember the look of disappointment and heartbreak on his face, being like, oh, okay. And I had to come over to I walked into his room, and I looked around, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you did so good. I'm so proud of you for taking the time to fold your clothes, put them away, make sure your floor is clear. And like, it wasn't perfect, but like, my God, it was so much better than where he originally came from, right? Like, he's made so much progress, and I could tell that me validating that and saying that I'm so proud of his work meant a lot to him. And I was like, you can do that? Just look up from your computer and tell him, good job, dude. Like, that's awesome. No. My coworker had to be like, okay, and you're supposed to be doing that. Like, that's a win in my books, right? And that's something that we need to be celebrating.
Absolutely.
So the reason why I think those little things should be celebrated, because in disguise, they're actually like big wins.
Yeah.
Because this means that like he's progressed so much since a year and a half ago, to the point where he's actually probably able to keep housing if he ever got housing. Like, like, and that's so vital to his well-being, and that's a big win to me. It's
It's
a
a huge
little win
win.
that leads to a big win, a little win that's disguised as a big win.
I really, 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 really like that.
Yeah, I think what you said is really important, because when we take the time to celebrate other people's small wins, it actually reinforces ourselves to celebrate our own small wins. So, like, when I'm celebrating a resident who was able to clean up his room after really struggling not to, and then I have days where I'm struggling with my house or my living space, and like thinking about, okay, if I just like fold my clothes and put it away, that's a victory in my eyes. Because if I can celebrate it for someone else, I should be able to celebrate it for myself, right? Like I'm no better than the people that I work with, and I should treat myself as the same compassion, the same empathy, the same gratitude, right?
Yeah, it places like some accountability on ourselves as frontline workers, like I don't know, or even just like as people in general,
Yeah.
when you're celebrating those wins for other people. And then the more that you're filling up your own cup in that way, then the more you're going to be able to do that for other people, the more you're going to be able to do it for yourself. So that's a really good point.
Absolutely. And that's actually something that came up to me a lot when I was working with youth in treatment, because they were expected to get up for school super early, like 8, 7 o'clock in the morning every single day. And I was like, I I'm not able to do that now. But as an adult, I have the choice to work night shifts, right? Like, I, and so whenever a kid who was struggling in their addiction and being able to wake up and make it to school on time, I'm like, that's a freaking amazing. That's beyond what I can do, right? Like,
I'd like to do a round of celebrations because I think it's really important, like under that gem, and like just being mindful and calling things into what you're seeing. And I wanted to celebrate Eileen for how amazing she has been doing. And she's been working really, really hard and like multiple jobs as well as Frontline Baddies. And we have this huge training and she's just been putting so much into it. So I really just wanted to do a shout out to Miss Eileen. And I want to celebrate Miss Danny because I know her job was not nice to her sometime this week. I don't know how or the specifics, but she just always kind of powers through even when stuff is hard. And today is a longer day and she's still here and she's showing up. And I don't know, I'm just very appreciative of both of you. So thank you so much.
thank you, Tracy. That's so sweet.
Thank you.
And like, let's not forget to celebrate Tracy,
Please
who
let's celebrate Tracy.
spends hours and hours staring at a screen editing.
Oh my God. If you are watching this on YouTube right now, give Tracy a round of applause
This is
right now.
all Tracy.
Because
all the editing.
all the editing, making it look cool and nice and awesome, and then uploading it. And then, yeah, the internal struggle editing these freaking videos, like kudos. And it's so beautiful. Like everything that you touch and work on with Frontline Baddies is always just immaculate at the end. And you put so much love and heart into it. And we feel it. And I know that the audience feels it too.
I literally could not have asked for a better co-founder, like, and partner in doing this. You are so resilient, so strong, even when you don't want to be, even though you don't have the, even when you want to throw in the towel, you never actually do. You're just like, this sucks, and then you move on. and I love that about you. And yet you still, the way that you carry yourself despite all the stressor, you do everything with grace and so much kindness and softness and compassion. I really admire that and appreciate that with you, Tracy. And yeah, like I really want to thank you for everything that you've done behind the scenes, like, and which is like an insane amount of work. I don't know how you do it. You're just like an awesome human being, and we love you.
Thank you guys. Well, I love all of you. I love you. I love all of you.
I love
Like
all of
I don't
you.
know. I love all of you. All the good feelings. Like celebrations. This idea of celebrations was taught to me by someone who I consider like a mentor, and I'm not gonna cry because you guys just said another bunch of nice things about me. But her name is Brandy, and she's one of the only like people trained in motivational interview wrapped around coaching in all of Canada right now, and it's a process taken from celebrations is taken from that process. But I've seen her implement it. I didn't know what they were, and I saw her implement it on different teams, and I saw just like the positivity of being able to like talk about the struggles, but then people's perseverance through the struggles, and that like the celebrate anything small or anything large, just like celebrating it and bringing nice light onto it. And the thing about Brandy, and y'all have never met her, and I wish you will one day. Like, I'm certain one day you will meet her, Eileen, when you come to Calgary and spend a little time. Like, she is one of the strongest women I think I've ever met in this line of work. And like, even through some really like hard things that she was going through, she was still showing up to work. Like, things that people would take full leaves on, like, she was still, you know, doing what she needed to do to take care of herself, and then would come in and work and would train me and help me. And I hadn't ever seen someone so dedicated to their jobs in that way, and it just like truly like inspires me to be better every day. So I guess that's another celebration to Miss Brandy, because she does teach me quite a bit and make me kind of reevaluate like what our community looks like and what our culture looks like and how we could be doing things better. And I don't think Frontline Baddies would exist if it wasn't for Brandy teaching me some of these things and teaching me like there's a better way that we could be doing this work, to be completely honest. So yeah, I love Brandy, and you guys will meet her one day.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope so.
Sounds like a
I'm
powerhouse.
putting it out there. I'm manifesting it.
I also want to put the spotlight on Danny a little bit and tell her how much I appreciate, and I'm so grateful that you said yes to like being a part of not just Frontline Baddies but the podcast as well, because it's a lot having this whole setup in your little space and having to take it down, set it up every week, and then having to deal with the fact that knowing structure works best for you, and then knowing that Frontline Baddies is not very structured and going over the time and taking longer than we originally planned to. And I want to acknowledge that I understand how hard that is for you. And I actually I'm very inspired by your strong or with your ability to really assert your boundaries, and I like want to do that more for myself. And I'm like, I always think about like, what would Daddy say? She would tell him to fuck off because she needs to take care of herself, and I should do the same thing. So like, again, like both you and Tracy, I cannot like think of anyone better to be doing this journey of Frontline Baddies with, and like I love you guys so much.
Thank you so much. And I mean, like, yeah, well, okay, I wanted to go around, but I just talked about Tracy. I'm going to talk about Eileen now because, yeah, I really want to celebrate that, you know, even when things are really, really tough, you are always doing your best to show up for the people in your life that you really care about. And it's really inspiring because there's times where I forget people exist in my life if I don't talk to them, because sometimes object permanence is a thing.
That's so true.
That's
so true.
But you were always so like inclusive, and you know, the way that you carry yourself around people that you care about is just so like you can tell it's so authentic and loving and caring and kind, and nothing is ever coming from a place of, you know, I don't know, like dishonesty or disheartenment. You're just so, I don't know. It's just sometimes I'm having like a bad day, or, you know, I'm like, oh man, I have to suck it up and do this, you know, XYZ, whatever the commitment is that I made. And if you're a part of that and I see you, it's kind of like, oh, Eileen's here. Oh, everything's going to be good now. Oh, it's so good. It's just you bring like a lightness about you where maybe you might not be feeling it in the moment, but you're definitely spreading the positivity to other people. And it's really amazing. And I've never met another person that can do that in the same way that you can so authentically. So I love that. And I'm so grateful that you're in my life and that you introduced me to Tracy and Frontline Baddies, because this has just been the wildest ride of my life. And I'm just so happy to be here. And I'm happy to have met you and that we're friends. Like, we're all friends outside of this too, which is really cool.
Yeah, we're strictly business, actually.
Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. No.
Boundaries. Work boundaries.
Boundaries who? No, it's just really cool. It's not you don't meet people like that all the time.
No, it's hard to find colleagues that you not only work with, but also like have healthy relationships
Oh
and a friendship
gosh,
with,
yeah.
right? And I feel like the dynamic amongst the Frontline Baddies crew is like so healthy, so good, so wholesome.
Yeah.
Like there's never a point, at least on my end, like I've seen any of us put each other down or
Mhm.
like invalidate each other, and or if there were any kind of misunderstanding, we're able to like talk it through and not
Mm.
take things so personal or whatever. And it's just a beautiful dynamic that we have here at Frontline Baddies, and y'all should be jealous.
Yeah. Be jealous.
Well, it's like that. It's that community care, right? And that community like love. And we all know that we're coming from a place of love with each other. And it's not like we're not a family. Like it's not that nonsense, that bullshit. It's like we we all like genuinely care and love about one another. And because we all know that and we all operate that way and we all feel it, it makes it a good space to be in. And so like I mean we were struggling earlier this week, y'all, like to our audience. It was rough earlier this week. I had just done like 8 hours of editing and I was not in a good space. And I messaged being like, it's done, the episode's done, we're good, finally. And you know, it immediately is like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And I'm stressy and a little depressy, and Eileen's stressy, a little depressy, and then Danny just pulls in and like hits one out of the park and is like, it's okay. It's okay. We're all new to this. Just remember, and like pulls out all the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques I forgot. And I'm like, yes, you're right. Like, I need to be kinder to myself. Perfectionism is hard, and we don't need to be perfect here. And just like that acknowledgement, right? And that recognition of like this whole podcast is a win for us. Frontline workers having their voice being able to be heard in a public sphere that is not censored by others is important for so many reasons. And we all know that. And so sometimes I forget that. And it was, thank you, Danny, for reminding me I'm not here to try to be perfect. We're not here to try to be perfect. We're here for a list of reasons, and perfection is not one of them. And yeah, I like it. And I like the small wins are still wins episode. It will be my favorite episode moving into the future. I already know it. And with that, we should tell our stories, because I want to hear what your guys' small wins are still wins. I want to hear them. I want to hear the stories.
Okay.
Tell me your deep dark secrets.
I do have a small win, I guess, story. It happened quite recently. It happened like 2 weeks ago. I was on shift at the shelter and a resident, I was doing bed checks and I noticed he was like face down on his bed in the corner, groaning in pain.
Oh my god.
And I was like, you need to go to the hospital because like you can't get up. Like this is a resident who normally is able to like walk and get up by himself and is like usually physically able-bodied. And so it was very concerning that he could not even get up from his bed. And I even had to like put him in one of those camping chairs and like drag him to the bathroom so that he can use the bathroom. But actually, anyway, so he was like refusing to go to the hospital because he's had a lot of trauma around hospitals, unfortunately, much like many other of our community members, unfortunately. Um, this client in particular didn't really have any friends, or like he often kind of just kept to himself and didn't really engage much with staff. And this was actually my first time like I've known him for a while, but this is my first time actually like having a full conversation with him.
Mhm.
And I could not convince him to go to the hospital that night. He absolutely was like, no, I cannot. I'm too scared. Like, and so, I tried to support him on my shift as best as I could without forcing him to go to the hospital. And unfortunately, it was my Friday. And when I got back from my weekend, he was still in the same situation where he was in a lot of pain. And I asked him, I'm like, did you, like, over the weekend, did you at any point seek medical help at all? Like, because, like, you're in so much pain. Like, I can't, it's hurting me, like, seeing you like this. And he said that he actually did go to the hospital, got an x-ray, and was told that he broke a hip. Yeah. And needed surgery to correct it. But he left against medical advice, because he was really scared to go through surgery. And like, I understand
Oh,
he's
yeah.
an elderly person, and he was just like, well, what if I never wake up? And those are totally valid fears, right? And I get it. But I had a heart to heart with him, and I said, I know you're scared, and I understand why you're scared, but I'm also worried that you're never gonna walk again. And that's like that's a reality for you. And I don't think he like realized that until I said that to him. And after and it took me almost like 7 hours to convince him to let me call him an ambulance to get him transported back to the hospital to get that surgery done.
Mhm.
And and I really had to frame it around like, one, you're like, think about it, you're probably never going to walk again if you don't get the surgery. Two, I'm concerned for you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very concerned for you. And I think, like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I was the only person there for him or whatever, but like, I don't know if anyone's ever like voiced that for him, like being a person who like never really engages with people in the community, never really engaged with his staff. And that was the first time that him and I had a heart to heart. And I told him, like, I don't want him to see I don't want to see him suffer, and like I can tell
Yeah.
he's suffering. Anyway, so I managed to get him going to the hospital, and he came back like a week later in a wheelchair, and he said he got his surgery, which I was like, "Oh my God, he got it done." But he came up to me specifically and said that he was so grateful that I convinced him to go because they actually found a clot in his lungs, and he was actually very close to death. And had he not gone, he said he probably would have passed away.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So like, even though I was like, great, got him to the hospital, that's a small win for me, it like really manifested into this whole thing where he was just like, you kind of saved my life, and like he was really grateful for that. And yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to celebrate these small wins, because you never know how these small wins are gonna impact people's lives, right?
Oh, 100%.
I was going to say that was not a small win, Eileen. Like, what?
Ginormous win.
See, it's funny because like when I got into the hospital, I was like all shift. I was like, well, that's a victory in my books, getting him to the hospital, whether he stays or not, or or actually goes through with the surgery. I don't know, but the fact that he got into the ambulance and left, that's a win in my books. And then, like a week later when he came back and was like, I actually almost died, and because I went to the hospital, I'm here and alive and I'm doing really well. It turned out to be like a really huge deal. So I don't think that's why I'm like, we shouldn't take for granted like these small victories, and
Oh,
because
yeah.
the more small victories we are able to achieve, the potentially bigger victories are achieved in the long run.
Yeah. Well,
So
and think about, all the negative experiences that this person most likely had and that you had talked about in the beginning of hospitals and probably people supporting him around the hospital.
yeah.
And then look at the positive influence that you were on him. And even just like talking to him and being like, yeah, I get it. That's friggin' scary. Like, I totally understand. And it's so valid.
Yeah, because like I think up until that point, a lot of folks were kind of just being like, just go to the hospital. You need help. Why are you scared? Like,
Yeah.
I think taking that moment to like really acknowledge and validate his fear around that, like, really helped him trust our judgment. And he actually even said it to me that like he's like, wow, you guys actually know what you're talking about. Right. And That's a win in my books again. So many little small
Absolutely.
wins in that one little incident. So,
Absolutely.
now we have a resident who's more trusting of staff, right? And that's what we aim for.
Well, that's so funny to me. You know what you're talking about. Well, and much to like what you're saying, Danny, around that as well, like the healthcare system is not always kind to the people that we serve as well. And, some quite large studies have been done in the last like 10 years here on the Canadian healthcare system and how for individuals who look houseless or for individuals who look Indigenous, they're not getting the healthcare they need and they're actually dying in the emergency rooms before even being intaked, right? And so, I mean, you didn't mention this individual's race, but just like keeping some of those factors in mind, like it is a lot of the individuals that we walk alongside of have to face so much stigma and hate in the healthcare system, and they're traumatized by it and they don't want to be in those spaces. And like I was going back to like even you getting them in the ambulance is not a small win. Like that's a big win. I know it's taken me days, if not weeks, to convince some individuals that like they need medical care that's well outside of any realm I know of to do and to help them. And like it is because of that past trauma that they're that hesitant, right? Because they've been treated poorly or they get police put on them as soon as they walk through the door. And I think that like kind of like I do kind of want to just address that in this episode as well, that like I think that that's why people don't think that's a big win, because an average citizen who looks normal walking into an ER room is treated better. Like, and the studies show that like they're treated faster, they're triaged higher, and you see the discrimination within the healthcare system across race, across gender, and even across sexuality and socioeconomic status. And so if you're an individual whose intersectionalities are, the ones that are getting impacted the most by it, you have the most harm, like the most medical harm to occur to you. Of course you're going to be untrusting. Of course you're not going to want to go in. And like how many individuals, kind of to the point you're talking about, Eileen, like how many individuals had that conversation with him but didn't actually ask him like, what are your fears? What are your concerns? Why? Like, why is such a small question? 3 letters, but but if you want to text it, it's 1. Like it has such a huge impact for someone to just be able to explain, these are what I'm worried about, or this is what I'm stressed about, or these are my concerns. Because maybe you can do something to help offset some of those concerns or those worries, or
Yeah,
whatever is going
absolutely.
on
You're
for
totally
them.
right. And because he was like he felt safe enough to share his concerns and his fear around going to the hospital, I was able to like communicate with the paramedics who showed up to the scene on how to not scare him. You know what I mean? I'm like, listen, this guy's very reluctant to go. We need to handle this with a lot of sensitivity. So like the resident was very insisting on trying to move from the chair to the stretcher himself. He like absolutely did not want anyone to like physically help him on. And even though it took a long time for him to do it, I was very insisting with the paramedics, like, let him do it. This is the one control that he has.
Mm-hmm.
Let him do it. I know it's going to take a little bit more time, but please, like like your patience and compassion will pay off in the end. And it
Mm-hmm.
did, right? Like, and they understood, they weren't annoyed about it. And like, and I was able to explain that because I got a good insight from the resident on like what his fears were.
And because those paramedics took that time then, and because he got the surgery, he didn't end up having like an embolism from having the blood clot, where paramedics would have had to be called down the line anyways to respond to that emergency. And at that point, that emergency is a much harder emergency to respond to than a broken hip.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Right? It's almost like frontline workers are important or
It's
something.
like we know what we're doing.
Yeah. It's like we advocate for care and compassion and
Saving the healthcare system money, one person at a time. I can go next if you're down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thoughts? Much like Eileen's story, it's going to start off as a small win, but then grow, because that's how small wins work. You get enough of them and they grow into a big one. I was working at a site for youth who did not have homes, and there was this one individual that I was a key worker for. And this individual is a very, very strong personality type. And they had done some substances here and there in their life, and they're very open about it now. But they were really struggling in, wanting to finish high school and wanting to not use substances. Like, they were really passionate about that, and they were just struggling because their friend group at the time were utilizing substances, and they were feeling that pressure. And they had sat down with me as their key worker and had told me hey, I need you to do this thing for me. And I was like, shoot, what do you want me to do? Let me know. And they're like, I need you to call me at 8:30, 8:45 when you're working your shifts and tell me that I have to come back to program or you're going to close my bed. I was like, what? I'm not going to close your bed. I immediately went into this what? I'm not doing that. I'm not threatening you to come back. What are you talking about? Because was not the vibe of the place, right? That wasn't the policy. It wasn't the principles of the place. And it was just, I was like, what? And they said, no. You need to understand, if my friends can hear me on the phone with you, and if you're threatening my bed and seeming like a bad person, they'll let me leave and I can come back here. And I was like, that makes no sense. And they're like, I know. I was like, no, but that just also doesn't make sense. Why would they let you come back to a place where they think there's a mean person at? I don't understand. And they're like, you don't have to understand. All you have to understand is, if you call me and you tell me I need to be back here because you're closing my bed, I will be back here because they will let me go. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. You're right. I don't need to get into the logic of it. I don't need to even understand it. I can do that for you 100%. And just that ask, though, of this individual was a big ask for them. This person is strong, is super strong-willed, and I don't know if they're listening to this right now or not, but they're super strong-willed, and they knew that's what they wanted. They wanted to start to get to bed on time. They wanted to start to go to sleep, and they progressed through the program. They got to where they needed to be, and there was one day in the last, I want to say, 1.5 2 years, where I get a call from my work wife at a location, at a different location, and she's telling me that, hey, do you have this resources for all the treatment centers? And I remember you saying something, and I'm like, yeah, sure, let's share, and we're talking about it. And she puts the phone down on the desk, and the individual that had made me call them every night I was on shift for 5 months grabs the phone and goes, hey, bitch. And I'm like, what? Absolutely, just what? You shouldn't be there. That program doesn't cater to your age group. In my brain, just going through why are you there? And they tell me that they've gotten into university, and that they're there for their work. And I don't know, I about dropped the phone, I can tell you that. I wasn't expecting that at all whatsoever. And then I could hear my work wife in the background being like, why are you on the phone? So I could hear like my work wife being like, "You shouldn't have the phone," and ends up taking the phone back from this individual and goes, "I'm so sorry about that." And I was like, "Why are you apologizing? And why didn't you tell me? Like, what? Why didn't you tell me that they've been doing so well? Like, like I'm just so excited to hear about that." And then they're like, "Oh, yeah. I mean, they know. They've known." I'm like, "What do you mean they know?" And she was telling me, like, my work wife is telling me, like, "Well, they keep saying that, like, you believed that they'd be able to do whatever they wanted to do. And when they kept saying that they wanted to be a youth worker, they wanted to be a youth worker, like, they knew that you already knew they were one." And I said, "But I mean, being like having that verification is like much, much different. Of course, I believe in them and their dreams and what they want to do, but like it being verified like makes a difference. And I want to hear about that." And my work wife is just a beauty. And she's like, "Yeah, but like, confidentiality." I was like, "Well, I read truth."
Yeah, but
Yeah. She's like, "Confidentiality." I was like, "Yeah, no, fair." And then she's like, "Well, do you want to talk to him more?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I get to talk to this individual that I hadn't seen in, I want to say 2.5, 3 years, and hadn't been their key worker for in that length of time either. Right. And it's just like, I'm so stoked. Like, I'm so stoked knowing that that individual is out there and is being an amazing youth worker because like they have always been a caring human. And how cool, like just how cool, one small thing, a phone call every day at 8:45 threatening their bed. Like nothing I would ever normally or want to do. Like, but for them it really was the difference between like being able to sleep and go to school the next day and like cutting off that friend time and me being the reason versus them being the reason for it. Like, I don't know. It's just small wins are cool for that. They just add up over time to bigger wins.
That's awesome that this is like literally proof of letting folks have a say in their own care
Mhm.
and knowing and expressing knowing what works for them. And even though you were like, even though it was something that you were hesitant to do because it was not something you guys normally would do or want to do, but again, letting our clients have autonomy over their care and a say in their care,
Yeah.
this is like proof that it
Yeah.
works, right? Like,
I mean, because I would never threaten a kid's bed like that, like just for.
no, that's not something we do, but this kid really knew that this was going to work for them, right?
And it did.
And
Yeah.
you trusted their
It did.
process.
Yeah. I'm also not going to lie, on my end, those phone calls were always so much fun because, like, there's not a lot of times where I get to, like, put the hammer down, especially in that job, right? Because I do believe so much in that, like, voice and choice and that, that agency and allowing them to have their agency. So, like, I don't ever come in hot and heavy of, like, you have to do this at this time at this place. Like, that's not how I operate. And so it was funny, like having to like put on that hat on those phone calls and be like, "Why aren't you here yet? If you're not here yet in 15-minute bed close, you're not going to be allowed to sleep in the bed." And like there was some nights where I went harder in and less nights where I didn't. And I do remember one night where I went a little bit harder in. And then one of like their friends in the background was like, "Well, she's extra bitchy tonight." And I hung up the phone laughing.
Give her the Oscar. It goes to Tracy.
So much fun. It was fun. Like as soon as I like stopped questioning why she wanted me to do it and it it wasn't harming anyone. It was like, yeah, this is fun.
That's so funny.
Danny, what is one of your favorite small wins?
Oh my gosh. There's honestly so many to pick from. One that has been weighing on my mind lately because this client has just been weighing on my mind lately. I don't know why. Sometimes that just happens. Um this so this this young person came into the resource treatment, etc. And from the very beginning, you know, their actions weren't really matching their words in terms of like wanting to be there and participate and show up for themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And they would say, you know, throughout the intake process, like, yep, no, I want to be here. This is what I need to do. Da, 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 da. And then the minute they got into the resource, they were like, I don't know if you can bleep this out, Tracy, but they were like, fuck this. I don't want to be here. Why am I here right now? Get me the frick out of here. Like, absolutely not. I'm going to go use. Like, fuck you guys. I hate you especially, points at me. I'm like, cool.
It's a fun one. I hate you especially.
there's one day where, you know, every single day, I feel like this young person was maybe accessing the resource for about a week at this point. And around, yeah, like day 6, day 7, they were just like, absolutely, like they were so dysregulated, like wanted to leave right then and there, which would like definitely absolutely. So I went out to go and talk to them. They wanted to go and be physical, so they were out in the little like back courtyard area. And I went out to go and speak with them, and they just had a really hard time. You know, they felt like they weren't going to get anything out of where they were, and you know, they didn't even know what they needed to work on, et cetera, et cetera. So I just spent, I want to say the whole conversation was maybe like 20 minutes, and basically I just said, you know, what are some things that are happening for you now? And he goes, oh, I'm just so like I can't even think. And so I said, have you heard of distress tolerance skills? Because I was on my DBT kick at that point in time. And he was like, I don't know, like, what is that? I have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, oh, okay. So we started talking about them. And I was like, you know, let's try one out. And I offered, you know, three different distress tolerance skills that were available. And he reluctantly agreed to do that, one of them. And we did. It was an ice skill. And he was like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't realize I just needed my hand to be cold for like 5 seconds. And then he goes, do you have any more of those? And I was like, oh yeah, I can print you off like a whole sheet of them. And he goes, oh yeah, maybe I'll take a look at them. I don't know though. I don't know how good it is. I'll take a look. I don't know. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, sounds good. So printed it off. And then a couple days later, he was still at the resource, and he was like, hey, do you have any other things of that DB whatever you were talking about? Are there any other things? I was like, yeah, I got some worksheets. So we started to look at worksheets together, and you know, he would circle distress tolerance skills or any of the skills that worked for him really well and cross out things that didn't work for him very well. And um it seems like a very small one because this young person didn't end up completing his time at the resource or treatment or any of that. However, throughout his time, I want to say he was maybe there like maybe it was like just about a month, I want to say. And as they were leaving, you know, I asked, you know, did you get anything out of your time here? Because that was his big thing. I'm not going to get anything out of this time. And he goes, you know, now when I get really upset or stressed or anxious, he goes, I have a toolbox to pick skills from. And I was like, that's really cool. And he goes, yeah. And we high-fived, and he left, and I haven't seen him since. I heard a little bit afterwards, I want to say about 6 months later, that this young person was doing really well and talking about starting his own, he loved like clothes and design. So he was like starting his own like business with that and like upcycling and clothes and all that kind of stuff. But I think about that young person a lot because that was one of the first times that a young person, I felt like they were very introspective on their own, and they just like needed a minute to like be on their own and look through all of those. And they were actually did a really good job of like practicing those skills on their own, which I thought was cool. But might seem really small in the moment, especially seeing as, you know, some people that I worked with at that time looked on this as a fail because the young person didn't stay throughout the time they were allotted in the resource. But I think that leaving with something, even if you don't even complete whatever sort of treatment program that you sign up to go and do, is such a great small win, big win in general. When sometimes people glide through resources sometimes and they're not ready or things aren't working or people aren't sitting down and asking them any of those questions, and then they leave, they complete it, but they don't get anything out of it or they don't get some of those hard things that are going to help them move forward. So that was one thing that really stuck with me that I was like, wow, I see a lot of young people come and go out of resources, and sometimes they, we see repeat people come back a lot because the first time they didn't get what they needed. And that young person, I really saw that he got at least one thing that he could like move forward with. So it makes me feel good to know that he's like out in the world, probably dunking his face in like an ice bucket or something.
I love that. And I know which young person you're talking about. And I'm actually so happy to hear you tell me that because yeah, like I remember them really struggling with I'm not gonna get anything out of this. This is a waste of time. Why am I here?
Yeah.
So to know that they walked away from that treatment, although I'm able to finish, they got something out of it, and
Yeah.
clearly, like it was a valuable tool for them, you know. Especially when they came back or not came back, but like when we heard from them a couple months later that they were thriving and making clothes and doing the things that they love, like
Yeah.
that's amazing. I love that.
I wonder sometimes, like I'm just in reflection of like we've worked with like youth and adults. I think all of us have worked with youth and adults, and I'm curious if the youth that we've talked about who were youth at the time but now are adults, if they think about us sometimes through these processes, right? And through their life, because in the moment that we're supporting them, they do verbalize that sometimes we've been the only individuals to like hear them or sit down and talk with them about what they're struggling with. And I'm just like curious how many lollipop moments that they have that like we might not even remember or think about. And like much to your point, Danny, like just because that youth didn't finish whatever time allocated they were supposed to finish in doesn't mean that they didn't get something from those interactions. It doesn't mean they didn't get anything from the resource. It just means that they understood that that resource was not right for them moving into the future, and they got what they needed, you know. And because I had people like that, and like I know Ms. Jen, I know you're listening to me right now. I know it. And like you've been that person for me for the majority of my life. I mean, Ms. Jen was my teacher, I guess, assistant teacher in like grade 2 or 1. And throughout my entire life, she has been an individual who like I just felt genuinely cared for and loved no matter what I was doing. And like I was not the best kid growing up. And she was like that person for me. And like it's weird being an adult now and like having her on Instagram and like talking with her, and like I love her genuinely. I love her a lot. And like she's that person for me. And I wonder if we're those people for some of the youth that we have helped, you know? Eileen, I can see you're almost about to cry with that thought.
Yeah. Thinking about all my kids.
It's
Oh,
different with kids. It just is.
Yeah.
it's
Like it is
different.
different with kids than it is adults. Not to say it's not as not impactful as adults. Like I mean, there's this one adult that I worked with in the downtown east side, and he's amazing. He called me his little angel, and like not in a condescending, like weird way, and just like I was there to help him, and he was a caring person. I miss him, and dude, if you're sober and you're still alive, please like reach out. This is like where relations are important. I think like that community care piece is important. Like these relationships are important, and they don't have to be like deep, but just like the fact that like someone cares enough about you to think about you outside of like their work day,
Yeah.
quote unquote, for all of those just listening and not actually watching, like your work day. Like this is not work. This is we care, you know. This is our love for our communities coming out.
Yeah. Well, just knowing that, someone's out there, even though you might not be, like, like this is especially true for adult clients that I've worked with. I might not be working with them directly all the time, but I'm always, doing my best to like advocate for them and for other clients that remind me of them. And yeah, I don't know. And it's nice to know that there's people out there that are probably looking back on their experiences and thinking like, oh, all right, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
That was all right.
Okay, so I'm curious how y'all are feeling. I feel like we had a lot of good feels throughout this episode, but we're wrapping it up. So I'm curious where y'all are at and how you're feeling right now.
Lots of feelings. Mostly good. I mean, a lot of the topics that we brought up has made me a little bit teary thinking about all the young people I worked with. And, the topic of small wins, I think ultimately, it just kind of comes down to people showing each other compassion,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's when you celebrate someone's small win, like, that is showing compassion, that is showing sensitivity.
Hmm.
And, like, it really goes to show, like, how far actively showing someone compassion can really take them and how much that can impact them. So,
Yeah.
you know, even if it sounds corny, do it. You never know how it's going to stick with somebody and how they're going to carry that with the rest of their life. And
Ask why, ask questions. Like, I think living through curiosity it can be so impactful for other people that maybe have never had someone else like take an interest in what's happening with them or for them or why they're doing the
yeah,
things that they're doing and just being like, "Hey, I don't actually know anything about that. Tell me about it, you know?
yeah,
Teach me. I'll learn." And
oh,
it's like you can see sometimes people are like, "Oh, okay. Like let's have a conversation about this instead of this other person just like shutting me down or
totally. Or
whatever."
like a behavior that, they might have historically been
Mhm.
punished for,
Yeah.
and to have someone take the time to be like, hey, how come this is affecting you or impacting you the way it is, and how
Yeah.
can we support you around that? Like, it just seems so simple, but I just don't think there's enough of that.
I agree. Yeah, I'm leaving this episode feeling very full. Like I feel, like a lot of my cup has been filled up from talking about this and from sharing celebrations with all of you and talking about all the wins, big or small, little or whatever, from clients and other young people that we've worked with. And sometimes it's like a really good reminder to sit down and sit with like a lot of those like positive, heartwarming things because this work can be a lot and it can take a lot out of you to show up and to be there. And sometimes it's nice to sit with people and dissect that and talk about it and, I don't know, just make note and name some of the really great things that come out of this work every day, all the time around the
Yeah.
world.
I'm recognizing I just had a lot of like full circle moments as we were talking, and it's um it's really I guess humbling. Um everything from like the start of celebrations to all of the stories that we shared and like the conversations of different things that we've discussed on this episode, and I'm just really grateful and appreciative of being here. Like I don't know. It's weird to think that I didn't think I would make it to this age even. And now that I'm at this age, I'm like thinking back right now of like if I was like teenage me would be proud of me right now. Like teenage me would be like teenage me couldn't even comprehend that this me could exist. And like I'm just like very proud and grateful to like be able to have like this moment right now, and you guys are a part of it. And I could have never teenage me could have never imagined having such great like friends and colleagues. So like I'm just like I'm in this space and place that's a really cool place to be in, and I'm going to ride this feeling for like at least another week. I'm manifesting it. Another week. We're riding this feeling for a
Amazing.
minute.
I love it. And I want to just encourage, like, if anyone's watching on YouTube or, if there's going to be any clips up, like, DM us on Instagram your like small wins. Like, I'd love to hear
Yeah,
anything that
or
anyone wants to
comment in the
share.
comment section.
Comment, like, let us know. I mean, we're a community after all, and what do we do with community? We're all going to support each other and be there for each other. So I invite that space for everyone listening and watching our faces.
I do just want to put a ground rule on that. Yeah. I do just want to put a ground rule on it that we give no identifying information. If it is not your personal win, you are not giving any identifying information. Yeah. Because that piece of confidentiality and agency is really important. And we do want to uphold that. So no identifiers.
Set boundaries, set limits. Love it. Love it. I love boundaries. I'm all about the boundaries. I'm all about the boundaries. Yeah, thank you so much for watching this episode or listening to this episode, however you're consuming this. Thank you so much for being here. We wouldn't be doing this without our community and without you. Small wins are still wins, and I hope, this gives time to reflect on that if that's what you want to do. And remember, we are all over the place. You can find us on Instagram at Frontline Baddies, at Frontline Baddies Podcast if you want to see more podcast-specific content. Also, you can check us out on website, www.frontlinebaddies.com. So much more information about workshops, who we are, and just any upcoming things that are coming out, merch and stickers and all that fun stuff. So definitely check us out. Thank you again so much for watching, listening. We love our Frontline Baddies.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Woo.